Apart being a physician, apart from being a researcher, I say we should reach out into the community and try to do something for these people. I'll share with you just 2 stories, and then I'll stop in the next 6 or 7 minutes. So this is my first epidemiological study which I did. It's called a very small study. It's called the CUP study, the Chennai Urban Population Study. What did we do in the study? What we did was we took a low-income group in T Nagar. It's a slum, actually. And then compared it with a middle-income group, shown here. That's the Asiad colony. And we just did a study. There are a lot of studies on urban and rural comparisons, but no comparison within an urban area to see whether the urban area is very uniform. So we hypothesized, no, it cannot be uniform. There must be differences even between this, because these guys have cars. They walk much less. They have more comfort. They must be more obese. So the hypothesis is that you must have more diabetes here and less diabetes there, okay? So that's my first epidemiological study 15 years ago before we went into INDIAB and so on. Small steps, we started there. What we found was no big surprise. The middle-income group had 12% having diabetes. The low-income group had 6%. We didn't even expect 6% then, but they had 6%, okay? Truly speaking, this is the first study in the world which had looked at an intra-urban difference in diabetes prevalence. That's why it got into a British journal. Otherwise, they won't publish it, okay? So, having done that, we said, I remembered my father's words, said, don't do research for research's sake. Try to benefit the community with which you work. So we went back, we left the low-income group aside because they were having so many problems. They had alcohol problem, they had smoking problem, they had TB problem, they had diarrheas, they had infant mortality was high. Diabetes is the least of their problems. So we said, let's leave them now. Okay, let's go to the middle-income group. Middle-income group is 80% of Chennai. So we said, let's go and focus on these guys. And we said, you know what? You got 12% now, diabetes. I predict that 10 years from now, we'll have 20%. Now it's actually 24%. We use the number 20%. And we said, I predict in 10 years' time, the rate it's growing, because we had all those figures. So we said, it's going to hit 20%. So can you do something about it? So they said, what should we do? I said, first thing is increase your physical activity. That's the single most important thing proven to prevent diabetes. So can you increase your physical activity? So they said, where will we go? If you go on the road, a dog will bite us. We'll get rabies and we'll die, okay? Or there'll be so much of smoke coming in that we'll die of pollution. Or a truck will hit us. Nobody follows rules here. Where will we go for exercise? We're looking around and we found that, and I'll show it to you in the video, there was this Asiad colony. And next door was a big plot of land. So we said, what is this one? Oh, that's for our next Asiad colony. We said, no. Why don't you build a park there? Don't build another Asiad colony. This Asiad colony will use that for a park. Why don't you do that? So they went to the government. Government wouldn't give them money. Then they said, no, we'll do it. We'll build the park themselves. So first time I know of, in India at least, people raised money and built their own park. It's a huge park. I'll show it to you. Can we get the video working? Okay. So that's the Asiad colony. Can lower the volume. Okay, so that's the Asiad colony. And next to that is this park that they built. It's built with love, okay? So you can see that there are places for people to walk. There are playgrounds for children to play. And there is even, Tirukkural, famous poetry. You can see those slogans there on the wall. Those are the famous quotations from Tirukkural. We have piped music and so on. So people are very skeptical. They said, just because you build a park, you can change people's behavior. You can't do it. They were wrong. Actually, you can. Because if you give people a place to walk, they will walk. Okay, and I'll show you what we did after that. So people started using it, not only the Asiad colony people, but other people from nearby. You can see children now have a place to play. They could not play earlier, okay? So with that, what happened was that we followed up these people after 10 years. Did they really use the park and did the exercises go up? From 14% of people who exercised before the park was built, it went up to 52.1%. Now that's a 277% increase in exercise. And again, for the first time, we were showing that by building a park, people actually increased their exercise. Then people said, okay, they increased their exercise. So what? Did they prevent diabetes? We said, we'll have to wait. We'll have to wait for 10 years. We'll have to see what happened. So 10 years later, we went back to the same colony and tested both those colonies. Remember, I showed you the poor people as well as the middle-income groups. We went back to Asiad colony, tested all of them. Just as a control, we went back and tested the people in the low-income group as well. We also did another thing. Just before we tested this Asiad colony, we went a few blocks away where there was no park, and tested similar living people to see what is the prevalence of diabetes, okay? And what happened was that at that time, the prevalence of diabetes in Chennai was around 18%. Now it's 24%, that's a latest study. But it was around 18% at that time. And among the middle-income group, like Asiad colony, it had already crossed 20%, as I had predicted, 20, 22, 24. So I said, okay, now if we test Asiad colony, if it is anything less than 20%, this must be the effect of exercise. Otherwise, they are identical. They are similar living people, similar socioeconomic status. The only thing is these people have the luxury of walking. Those people don't, okay? So we went ahead and did the population-based survey again. Remember, the original figure was 12%, okay? When I asked people, what do you think, I can ask you, what do you think happened after all the exercise they did? From 12%, where do you think it would have gone? Take a shot. Remained at 12%. Somebody told me it would have gone down to 0. I wish it did. It can't happen. You're forgetting one small factor, that these people are 10 years older. And age is a non-modifiable risk factor. People also put on weight with age. Even if you walk for half an hour, 1 hour, with age you do put on some amount of fat and some amount of weight, okay? Because they can't walk because of arthritis, something will happen and therefore it goes up. So what actually happened was, remember I told you it's 20, 22%, okay? In this colony, it was only 15%. So there's a clear 5 to 7 to 8% lowering in the diabetes prevalence after this 10-year period, okay? But what was shocking to us was the next part of the story. Remember, it was 6%, and we left these people without doing anything. We said, oh, they don't need to, the diabetes is not a problem. 10 years later, and we didn't do anything to them. We just went and tested it again. What we found was it's increased to 15% in these poor people, okay? So there is a good news and a bad news here. The good news is that with 30 minutes of walking, which is what the average of these people did, you could reduce your prevalence rates of diabetes. The bad news is that now poor people are getting diabetes. And if you go to the slums of Dharavi here in Mumbai and test them, you will find much more than 15% have diabetes because they're much better off than my Bharati Nagar slum people there, because the amount of people who live here are much more wealthy than the slums of Chennai, okay? So we are talking about a mixed thing happening here. The rich people are beginning to get more aware of what they should do, and over a period of time, as it happened in the US, as it happened in the San Francisco study, they will level off. But the poor people will now get the diabetes, and they can't afford it. And that's why, on a war footing, we have to take diabetes prevention, and that's what I'm going to show you in the next. So this is an example of prevention of diabetes through community empowerment. In the last 4 or 5 minutes, I'm going to tell you about the rural story. So when we did all this, people said, there are always critics. I've had critics all my life, and they are the ones who have driven me. Very honestly, I thank my critics. So then they came back and said, oh, all this you did in Chennai, you know, what big thing you did. What have you done for rural people? Have you done anything for rural people? That's where India lives. You have to do something for rural people. So I said, okay, I have a dream that in my lifetime, I will do something for rural people. It's a combined dream of my late wife and me. So we first started studying okay, what is rural India? So we found that 72% of people live in rural areas, but 75% of the doctors practice in urban areas. So it's a complete mismatch. No government has succeeded in taking doctors into rural areas and making them. And I think one of the previous speakers also mentioned this. Why will they go there? There's nothing there. There's no school there, no electricity there, no water there. Who's going to go there? So how do we bridge this gap if you can't make doctors go when you have lack of awareness, access problems, poverty problems, and so on? So I said, let's call this as the 4A test. Can we make diabetes care available, accessible, affordable, and acceptable in rural India? They don't even know about diabetes. So they've got other problems. But the Asiad colony story told us that we cannot neglect the poor people. So let's go and give it a try in rural areas. God sent, and believe me, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a dream, it will come true. Because the moment we thought about this, I got a call from the zamindar of a village in Chunampet. Now, Chunampet is about 120 kilometers down south of Chennai. I had never heard of this place called Chunampet, and the zamindar, the owner of that whole village, he's a bachelor. and he has nothing else to do. So he's giving you all his lands. It's thousands of acres, which he's giving away to everyone, calling everyone, here, take. But you have to give him a cost, what you'll do with it. And then he gives it away free, okay? So he called me, and he said, I've got land, and that's Chunampet that's Chennai, and you can see the blue dot is Chunampet, this Kanchipuram district, and the southernmost tip is that little village called Chunampet. So he called me, and he said, come and see me in Chunampet. So I went. So he said, Doc, I'm going to give you 9 acres of land. Have it earmarked, everything ready. 5 minutes, I'll give you, go out, think what you're going to do, and tell me, yes or no. If you're not coming with a good answer, you go home. If you come with a good answer, I give you straight away. 9 acres of land, okay? So I went out, brainstormed for 2 minutes, and I came back, and I said, I got it. I'll tell you what I'll do. So he said, what? I said, first of all, I didn't know where Chunampet was, okay? In 5 years' time, Chunampet will become world famous. That's the first thing. Your village will become world famous. Second is that you're giving it to me free, okay? I can run a number of centers. I can earn my money in whichever way I want. I don't want to do it from Chunampet, okay? So I will give to Chunampet. I will not take from Chunampet. Only these 2 things I'll tell you. And your people will be benefited. We'll build a rural center here. We'll produce a model here which the whole world will be proud of, you know. Immediately wrote out 9 acres of land to me. Then I went to the World Diabetes Foundation and said, look, I need a van. This van will go and service all these people. I need the initial funding. They said, only 3 years we'll give you. After that, you're on your own. We said, fine, give me for 3 years. So they gave me the salary support as well as this van for 3 years. Then I went to ISRO, and I said, look, I need a satellite. I need to do things by telemedicine, because doctors are not going to go. So I have to connect them to my base center in Chennai, and then provide a model of diabetes for the world. So they said, fine, they gave it to me. So we built this van from scratch, and it is a fully loaded diabetes hospital. So it has a lab inside, air conditioning, Doppler, ECG, biothermometry, eye examination, fundus camera, video conferencing, VSAT, you name it, everything is there in this van. And then, who will run this? So we took people from the local area, unemployed young men and women, brought them to Chennai, trained them, and put them back there. This is exactly what Abdul Kalam said, Pura, provide urban amenities in rural areas, Pura. So this is an exact example of Pura. So we said, let this happen. There's no way I can take a Chennai guy and say, go and spend 1 year in Chunampet. He won't come back. But take a Chunampet guy, where will you go? Put him back there, that's his home, put him there. So we did that. Then what happened was, so people go to huts such as this, and these are all our volunteers who are trained. For example, this lady, unemployed lady, now child is going to school, she has all the time, she's trained, she can take heights, weights, blood pressures, she can do blood sugars, okay? The results can be she's wearing gloves, informed consents are obtained from people, all the ethical principles are followed, everything is done free of cost. Then if they have diabetes, the van is just outside their door, we go village to village, and then inside the van, the lady can have her ECG tested, her foot tested. Now this is a van driver. Van driver, what will he do rest of the time? So he becomes an eye technician, okay? So he can take eye pictures. All it needs is 2 dots to be combined, click button, and you'll get the picture. That picture can then be zoomed directly into our ophthalmologist who's sitting in our Gopalapuram center in Chennai, from where, through video conferencing, she's now talking to the lady who's sitting inside the van, okay? And telling her, this is diabetic retinopathy, this is what we have done, and this is the screening we have done, and this is Dr. Rakesh. Rakesh was practicing there. He was just a GP practicing there. We pulled him and said, come and get trained to become a diabetologist. Trained him, put him back there, okay, in his own village. And then that was the building you just saw was the one we built. So we donated it. My wife and I donated the entire amount for the building, set it up as a charity so that for the next 10 generations, we will not get 1 rupee out of Chunampet, and it will go on. Is everything done free? Yes, the screening is done completely free. But how will a center sustain? So a nominal amount people pay, those who can afford to pay. Those who cannot afford to pay, it's free. We have a counselor who will go through it, a social worker, and if they can't afford to pay anything below poverty line, it's free. Those who can afford to pay will pay less than half if they came to Chennai, with the same facilities there, same quality provided. So they save on transport, they save on taking wages off, they don't have to take a person to come. It is next door, and they get it at 50% or less of the cost. It's a win-win situation for everyone. God sent for them. So with this, what happened was, we then adopted, the government gave us a free hand. The government of Tamil Nadu said, you're doing great work, you take the whole villages, adopt the villages. Send us quarterly reports of what you do. That's all we ask you. We don't ask you anything else. So, and we said, we don't want any money from you, okay? Give us a free hand. So, we were able to, sorry.